I built this business the old-fashioned way. Hard work and a whole lot of spreadsheets.
Yeah, about that, I upgraded us to Odoo. Odoo puts everything we need, sales, inventory, accounting, on one connected platform. No more juggling systems, no more headaches.
So it all works together?
Exactly.
Odoo is the all-in-one business software that makes running and passing on a business easier than ever. Take your business into the next generation. Try Odoo free at odoo.com. That's ODOO.com.
Hey there, everyone, and welcome back to Real Estate Real and Unscripted with Nicole Miller. Thank you guys for joining me. I'm so excited to be back with you. As you know, every episode, my goal is to add value, to bring education to both the real estate professional as well as the end user with any kind of subject that touches the ecosystem of real estate. Everything. As you've seen so far, we've launched all sorts of different subjects. And today I am super excited to host an awesome attorney who is an elder law attorney who focuses on Medicaid as well as other Medicaid planning, as well as other areas of elder law. But today's episode is going to be about the subject of Medicaid planning, how that affects you as a person and within the real estate world as well. And so I'm excited to have with me today Travis Kimmey, who is coming in via Zoom. And I'm looking forward to our conversation. Thank you so much, Travis, for joining me and being a guest here with us.
Good morning, Nicole. How are you doing this morning?
I'm awesome. Thank God. All is good.
Good.
So how I like to start the show is I'm very big on making a difference, being a disruptor, doing things differently in your space to add value and just to kind of elevate the industry. So, Travis, tell me what makes, introduce yourself, let us know a little bit about yourself and what makes you different. What would you say is like your secret sauce that you do, to elevate this industry and your space?
Okay. All right. Thank you, Nicole. All right. A little bit about myself. Grew up in North Carolina, came to Florida in 2004, have, worked in several different industries before I went to law school. I went to law school when I was 31.
Oh, wow.
What makes me unique, I think, is that from other law firms, I speak to the client and I'm part of the intake process. Okay. So elder law, and specifically, Medicaid planning that involves, loved ones maybe leaving the home, maybe getting care at home. So there's sort of a personal element to it. So I talk to people and, a lot of people say, well, this is sort of different than any other attorney I've met because part of what I'm trying to gather are facts and certain, preferences that the client, because I'm usually either talking to family members or the applicant themselves. Okay. And what I'm trying to do is pick up on little cues, little things as far as so I can guide them and put them in the most appropriate situation possible. Some people don't want to leave the home. Some people, their personalities, they don't want to leave the home, but yet once you get them out of the home, they're fine. Okay. So there's certain things that, when I'm talking with people, I don't necessarily just dig into the guts of the legal issues. I try to figure out, a little bit about them, what they like, and then we try to, advise them and create a plan that considers, the personality, what the type of person they are, things like that, as well as the legal issues. And we try to blend that because otherwise you're not going to have a solution that's sustainable. Okay. If I put somebody into, if I help place somebody at a facility, and, we haven't sort of done a full evaluation of it, it may not work. And moving within this industry is a significant burden on family. It can cause health problems. Okay. Certain people with cognitive issues, a change in scenery can be a significant disruption and can start to affect their physical health as well as their mental health. So, a lot of what I do is part legal and part counselor, and a lot of people call attorneys counselor, but there's that human element, and my clients talk to me. My clients talk to my staff, and we do. I have staff that helps organize certain things, but for the most part, it's talking with me. So that's where I think it's a little different, and I extend a lot of my time where maybe some other firms do it a little differently. But I think that's important because it gives me sort of a deeper look into the clients that I'm dealing with and how to keep them as happy as possible. It's not everybody enjoys getting old. My dad.
Oh, we all do it. We're all there.
Isn't for sissies. But the reality is, we have to navigate this. And they always say death and taxes. The reality is everybody's going to get old, and we're all going to need this at some point. So, so that's what I do that I think is a little different and sets me apart. And I've had success, using that method. So
I love that. I love that about you. A little background. Travis and I met 3 years ago. 4 years ago. Oh my goodness. 2022, April, actually.
Yep.
Yeah. So Travis and I met 4 years ago as a byproduct of me working a transaction that I was like talking to a wall, trying to get things out of the other side of the seller's agent. And she kept referencing, I'm going to follow up with the seller's attorney. I'm going to follow up with the seller's attorney. I'm going to follow up with the seller's attorney. And I said, hey, do you want me to just follow up with the seller's attorney for you? And she was like, yeah, that would make things so much easier. So I reached out to Travis and I was like, hi, so here's where we're at. And like, I was confused because seller's attorney usually in real estate transactions is like the real estate attorney that's doing the transaction. And, and then we spoke, I realized kind of where his role was. And I really, we resonated because we are very similar in how we do things. And I really liked how you did bring that element, I'm calling, you're answering, you're helping, you're there, there's that personal touch and understanding how important that is. And so you have been a go-to of mine for a lot of situations and have, really helped clients where others failed. and that's been, I think that that's a testament to the way you've run your business. And I really appreciate that. So thank you. So our subject that we're discussing today is an interesting one. So it's one that a lot of people are not aware of. It's one that a lot of, agents especially are not aware of, but it's called Medicaid planning, right? So Medicaid, people kind of know what's Medicaid. Okay. When you are on state health care and it's, it has kind of different stigmas but like from an elder's perspective, we are in a time right now, correct me if I'm wrong, but, and I work with a lot of seniors where our generation, our parents' generation and our grandparents' generation, they did not realize that certain things of getting old are not covered by Medicare, right? Medicaid is what we're talking about, right? But like people, you'll speak to seniors and they'll say, oh no, I'm good. I'll get Medicare when I turn X and then and it's like, well, hang on, like what happens when you need care, right? So we're in this sandwich generation right now where our, middle-aged adults are taking care of both their younger kids and their older kids and their, and I think their older parents, and they're basically, in a position where a lot of these seniors didn't plan to understand that there's going to be a need for this care as you age, and there's a cost associated with that. And unfortunately, it's not one that's given to everyone as, it's not part of your universal healthcare. You're not getting that cost, right? So something that came about my desk, being in the senior space and really being involved in this world for about 10 years at this point, is something called Medicaid planning. It was definitely a very interesting concept And once I kind of learned more about it, I've been able to really help a lot of clients over the years. And so, Travis, tell us a little bit, just kind of the overarching background, and we'll dig into some deeper questions. But like, what is this Medicaid planning? What's a little bit about that and the background of what's being done in those situations?
Okay. All right. So I'll piggyback a little bit on what you've been, what you were mentioning. Sometimes it's a lack of planning. Sometimes, you have, a lot of folks just believe that they're always going to be up, walking around, going to be fine. Everything's going to be okay. We're very optimistic and, by nature, or at least a lot of us are. The realities are this stuff isn't really taught to anybody. It's not like when you go on Medicare, you take a 3-hour course or you get trained on it. Okay. And a lot of people don't recognize the reality that Medicare only covers certain portions. It's mainly, hospital care. They do provide some of the expenses for rehabilitation, but they don't cover everything. Medicare supplements can help defray the cost of rehab stays and prescriptions and other things like that. But the reality is, if we need, care outside of the house specifically, okay, if you need 24-hour care, you're talking skilled nursing facility. If you need help, doing medicines, you don't feed yourself, you don't eat a good diet if somebody doesn't help plan that for you. Things like that, activities of daily living. Then we're talking about an assisted living facility. Okay. The reality is the costs of these places are astronomical at times. Okay. An assisted living normally is going to run between $3,500 and $5,500 plus.
Plus care.
Plus medical care.
Right.
Okay. And you can go up, the more you spend, the nicer.
If you've got spring fever, Lowe's has the cure. During SpringFest, make your landscape stand out with 3 free bags of Miracle-Gro 3/4 cubic foot garden soil when you buy 3. Plus, get up to 40% off select major appliances to keep clothes, food, and dishes fresh all season long. Our best lineup is here at Lowe's. Valid through 4/22 while supplies last. Selection varies by location. See Lowe's.com for details. Soil offer excludes Alaska and Hawaii.
The facility. Okay. We'll talk about conditions and things like that later. But so essentially there's 2 types of planning. We can either do preventative planning, when clients meet to do estate planning, things like that, I will bring up long-term care. And there are ways that we can transfer assets. And everybody, well, maybe not everybody, but there's a 5-year look-back period. Okay. When somebody applies for Medicaid, they look back 5 years. Just to make sure that you're not gifting everything away. Okay, so there are certain strategies that we can employ that avoid being considered a gift. Or if we do it 5 years ahead of the application, we're okay, so we can make certain transfers. That's more preventative. I also do sort of what's called emergency planning. Okay, somebody calls me up, mom needs to go into a skilled nursing facility, or mom needs to go to an assisted living. Okay, at that point, we don't have the ability to do preventative planning and maybe wait out the 5-year period before we apply. So then there's certain asset transfers that are eligible, okay, that are not considered a gift. I'll just list them really quick: a personal service contract, a contribution to a pooled trust. And people can always invest in income-producing real estate, and there are ways that we can maneuver things so that they can qualify. For Medicaid, you have to qualify for income. Okay, you have to be below a certain gross income level. You also have to have less than, normally $2,000 in assets, married couple $3,000. Okay.
So basically, and I'm going to just kind of piggyback on that real quick. So when when we're considering this Medicaid planning situation, I look at it from like a real estate lens, right? So the idea behind it is that it's using compliant vehicles that allow for certain, like he says, assets and income to be deferred into certain vehicles that would allow for you to meet the qualifications to get approved for Medicaid. And the idea behind, doing that is ultimately, right, like you have people who maybe are selling their home and their home is going to get them $200,000. And that's all they have, right? But they have, maybe 30 grand in a bank account. And then when they sell their home, they're going to get $200,000. And they're now going into an assisted living. Well, guess what? That $200,000 will be gone in a heartbeat and a jump away, right? And so, the idea and how it was always explained to me is that, and think about it on the flip side, I had a client who was like, I don't want to do that. I have that money. I'm like, but you don't, because you're going to outlive your 200,000. And then guess where you're going to be? You're going to be on Medicaid. You're going to be if you can get into a skilled nursing on Medicaid, right? So the idea behind it is that it helps people who have, assets within a class of certain amount of money that really won't allow them to actually live out their life that they have in a manner that, the money's going to run out before they do, right? So you're able to help them qualify compliantly through vehicles that are there to be used and able to be done. You're sending that to the government. They're saying, okay, we know what you did. We know where everything is, to be able to help this person get some of these benefits. And so, talking about the benefits, if let's say, someone comes to you and they're planning, there's not much in advance that they can do, right? So like they come in an urgent situation and they're selling this house. As a realtor, I always, when I work with my senior clients, I'm always asking them, are you on Medicaid? and if they tell me yes, as a realtor, that's important, because now if we sell their house, they're going to have a problem unless their Medicaid attorney is involved in knowing that I'm now suddenly going to get them $500,000 for their house. And then now they're going to, right? Am I correct? So like if that comes,
let
and
me
you're
jump
not,
in and explain this, because so what has happened, and I was going to throw this in earlier, you don't always have to sell the house. The house can be is a non-countable asset as long as somebody expresses an intent to return home. But when they do, we are transitioning a non-countable asset to something that is now countable. So within 30 days of the receipt of those proceeds, there has to be some type of asset protection strategy employed, or otherwise you will lose eligibility. Okay. And another thing that you mentioned, $200,000 sale, proceeds from the sale of a condo. $200,000 goes quick. Okay. I've seen $650,000 go in a year and a half. Okay. I've seen money go really fast. Tests, certain medical procedures that aren't 100% covered, rehab facility stays. If you do not have a supplement, you do not have Medicaid, the first 20 days Medicare pays for, the next 80 are an 80-20 split. That 20% can be significant, okay? And what the intent here is, it's, because obviously with the current, some of the stories in the news, things like that, we are shifting assets to help people qualify for government benefits. But the reality is, if we don't do this, you are only on Medicaid, which means you get the one wheelchair we give you. Your quality of life is pretty low. You're completely dependent on the government. So by doing this, we allow family to use your money to supplement and give you a better quality of life. That's really it.
Yeah.
Okay. And skilled nursing facilities without Medicaid are normally unaffordable for people. Most skilled nursing facilities are run $8,000 to $10,000 and up, and that's sort of on the lower end.
Yeah.
So the reality is 80% of the people that I see and that I visit and at those facilities, 80% of them are on Medicaid.
Yeah. Okay. No, there's definitely a lot to talk about when it comes to this. So let's say, let's look at a case scenario, right? So you have a senior who is 80 years old, no longer able to live alone, has, needs care in the home, maybe starting to show some signs of diminished capacity. The children are concerned. They're going to now move her to a assisted living community near them because she lives an hour and a half away, and they're moving her to assisted living near them. And that assisted living charges $4,500 a month plus level of care. And she's in a position where now, they're doing that on their own, right? They didn't meet me. I didn't share with them the potential of where you're at. And they sell their condo because that's what they're thinking. I got to sell my condo. I'm going to have the money because that's where my money is. And now I'm going to have this money. And I'm 80, remember? Like, she could outlive that. So then they get that place. Now her health declines rapidly. And it's not, it's $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 a month. And within 2 years, mom has no more money, right? So what happens at that point? Forget about you in the Medicaid planning. Like, what is the end game when you are put in that position without this Medicaid planning? What does one do? Then the nursing, then what happens at that point?
They're going to spend, eventually they'll spend all the money down.
Right.
And if we're at an assisted living, it depends. Sometimes, because assisted livings, the contract with the state is that your income normally goes to pay the room and board. Okay, Medicaid, if you're eligible and you're approved, Medicaid kicks in about $1,500 to $1,800 towards the medical care portion. So a lot of the time when we have somebody at an assisted living, we have a gap. Okay,
yeah.
And if the money runs out, who's paying that gap? Nobody. Okay. And what will happen is you'll eventually get put on Medicaid, and more than likely they'll probably try to transfer you to a skilled nursing facility.
That's what I thought, right?
Okay.
Yeah, that's usually what I think was what it.
That's sort of the problem, but it brings up a really good point here. Okay. Assisted livings. All right. They have different liability issues than a skilled nursing facility that provides 24/7 care. And I always counsel with people, okay, about assisted livings. Okay, we want to go there. Have we had any falls? Okay, how is mom or dad's stability? Because what will happen is you go to an assisted living, you have a fall. They will give you a 30, 45-day notice saying, hey, listen, you've got to either provide a sitter in the room at your own extra expense, or we do not provide the level of care suitable for you to reside at our facility. And then you have to go to a skilled nursing facility. Now, what I would normally do if I could get involved in that conversation at the beginning, I would say, all right, let's get this application in while we're at home. And I'll tell you why. If we evaluate somebody at home and, they're having problems getting from the bed to the shower, walking, things like that, and there is nobody at the house, normally the medical necessity score is much higher, because if we do that same evaluation at an assisted living, guess what they're going to say? They're going to, well, you have all this help here. Okay, you're not a 5, you're a 3. Okay. And so this is important to understand here, is that there is a wait list that you go on when you apply for Medicaid. Okay. And basically you get put on a list based on rank and score, and you are called off the wait list at that point. When you get called up, you can put in the application within 30 days. Okay. If you are ranked a 5 and you're at home, probably getting a call in a month or 2. If you're ranked a 3 and you're at an assisted living facility, I don't know when that call's coming. Maybe 3 to 5.
Too many tools, too much stress, and way too many bills.
Odoo replaces it all. One connected platform for every part of your business, so you can work faster, smarter, and for less. Odoo, the only software you'll ever need. Try it free today at odoo.com. That's ODOO.com.
Months out, maybe 8 months out. So there's some strategy involved as far as where we're at, when we get assessed, how we apply.
getting ahead of things. I'm always big about getting ahead of things and preparing and planning. What happens if if you were to be in a facility, they're at a facility and you go in as Medicaid pending, right? So that's basically where they're going into this facility and you're applying, and the facility is one that takes Medicaid, and you go in Medicaid pending, and Travis is in the background doing this application, and then 3-4 months you're in this facility. In that Medicaid pending status while you're at that facility, and they approve you in 5 or 6 months, right? Those 5-6 months, that's on you, right? There's no is there a retroactive? What happens when they get approved? And until they get approved, how is that being, is that self-funded, and does it get retroactive? What does that look like?
Normally, a lot of facilities will give you like a Medicaid pending rate. Okay. And normally that's very close to the income that people have. Okay. Then once you're approved, you get retroactive to the day, or the first day of the month you apply. Okay. So if you go in on the 10th of April, the application goes in, okay, the end of April. And then let's just say we get approved. And normally we're getting approval, it's within 90 days. Okay, they have to legally, they're supposed to give us an answer within 90 days of the application being submitted. But sometimes I have situations where people are in assisted livings and they haven't gotten called off the wait list. You're paying until you get called off the wait list. Okay, once we're Medicaid pending, that's where it can be retroactive. Okay. But these are all things that need to be discussed and people with parents that are dealing with this, or loved ones, that are dealing with assisted living, skilled nursing, you need to be careful, because you start incurring charges. And if you're not 100% correct, the family home, they may go after the family home, possibly. Okay. There's certain things that we want to avoid, because, you run up a big nursing home bill, they're going to look for sources for it to be paid. Now, there are ways to avoid that, but the reality is if you don't do any planning, it can really be catastrophic. And, and we'll additionally, one thing that's important, power of attorney and healthcare surrogate.
I was just about to say that. So outside of the Medicaid world, I did another show as well because I wanted this to be super niched, but is planning and getting all those ducks in a row. If mom is, and obviously certain people are very stubborn and they're like, I don't need my kids. I don't want my kids. I don't need you knowing my business. Mind your own business. And then when you mind your own business enough as the kid, and then now next thing you know, they are declining rapidly. And then you're at a point where you can't do anything. And now you're doing guardianship. And it kind of just spirals. So I've had many situations where the seniors have been and I get it, it's hard to give up your autonomy and it's a hard point in your life, right? But, it's good for you as a senior. And I'm speaking to the seniors out there, while you are of sound body and mind and you are able to make those decisions, get those people appointed that and trust. And then also, get things reviewed every so often with the attorney to make sure that you're updating stuff and the person that's there is alive and well still. And you had someone who was, or maybe things changed. But you want to get ahead of that, because ultimately, if you don't, now you're going to be in a position where your family's, it's a complete mess. And then you're going to have someone who's going to take care of you that you did not want. It was not of your choice. It's court appointed. And at that point, it's not good. So I would urge, everyone out there, young, old, even if you are, even if you're, think of it this way, we'll touch on your kids, right? Your kids are going to college. They're 18. Guess what? You as the parent can't do anything when they are in the hospital. They are 18 unless you can get these docs in a row, right? So from a senior standpoint, right? Speak to any of that.
As soon as you're 18, you're an adult, you have legal rights, okay? HIPAA, the Health Insurance Protection Act that protects your health information from being disseminated, that applies once you're 18. So if you're a freshman at the University of Florida and you miss the couch when you jump off the balcony and your parents are rushing, if they don't have that healthcare surrogate in place that they can provide to the hospital, they're going to be driving up to the hospital. Okay. This stuff is vitally important because my mom, and I talk about my situation, my mom doesn't tell me about healthcare. She'll lie. She doesn't let me know what's going on. And as sort of, the trustee, sort of guardian, elder law attorney of the family, I'm sort of in charge of making sure she's okay. One thing that I think is important, and I think, Nicole, the key is having these discussions, but I think these discussions need to happen sooner rather than later for all families. The one thing I always talk about is your 65-year-old self is different than your 75-year-old self. How so? I always talk about diminished capacity, sort of like a deck of cards. And it's sometimes we've got 51 out of the 52. We make the most decisions right. We're pretty sharp.
Yeah.
Maybe we get down to 40 out of the 52. All of a sudden, certain decisions are a little, Mom, I don't think that's a good idea. Dad, I don't know about that. And I ran into a situation. I'm power of attorney. I'm healthcare surrogate for my mother. My mother was facing triple negative breast cancer in June. And my mom could barely walk. My mom was hanging on to independence. And my mom's a former nurse. And my mom said, I get to make decisions. And I was like, Mom, these are not good decisions. My mom tried to get in an Uber. She could barely stand. I mean, with a walker, she could barely stand. She's doing better now. But that was a situation where I couldn't, even as her healthcare surrogate, override the dangerous behaviors that she was doing. And I had wished that we'd maybe considered a guardianship before she got into this health issue, because she would have agreed to it beforehand.
Right.
But now, she was on prednisone. She wasn't feeling well. And I got to be honest with you, I think my mom, like in the back of her mind, thought she was dying. And it created some very strange behavior. And, my mom, I always joked, she's so sweet, she'll give you cavities. She changed. And full change.
Yeah.
Went from nice to screaming at everybody. And, I don't want to make light of it, but the reality is like these things change. And so I always tell folks, like, let's have this conversation before we have to really, deal with an emergency situation, because it's going to be much easier if we have some plans, have some statements like, Mom, Dad, this is what you agreed to, you were of sound mind and body. This is what you wanted, and it's difficult. I mean, trying to override your parent, the one that, raised you, was always your source of like, hey, Mom, Dad, what do I do in this situation? So it's a flip.
Right.
And it's tough, it's tough to come down on your parent.
And as a senior out there,
the dynamics of everything.
Say that
it's really fascinating, and that's what makes it hard. So having run into enough cases where you see strange things happen, it's made me more inclusive as far as like what I ask, things like that, to really try to, we can't prevent everything, but I think, sort of the way I do it, like I help people prevent some of the issues that, really cause a lot of stress for the family, cause a lot of cost, like moving from one ALF to another one just because it's not working at this one because of, certain things that could have been picked up if you ask enough questions. Okay. So I ask a lot of questions. I really try to dig in a little bit. So I'm
going to just kind of plug in here. So when, if someone is getting, to the point where they're needing that care or, now, right? So like, as you're getting older, before you get to that point, now I challenge people out there to just evaluate your circumstances, have a conversation with an elder law attorney, someone who also may, if you're in the bracket that, and the purpose of Medicaid planning isn't to help millionaires, right? Like you're not helping millionaires make more money. It's helping the people who are in that window of, yes, you might have a $500,000 house, but when you and your husband both end up in assisted living, that's gone in a heartbeat, right? So there are vehicles. And so ultimately, if you do get Medicaid, right? And so just kind of getting technical here. So if you go into the community, you get, because we call it community, not facility. But you get into this, ALF community and you get a Medicaid pending and then you get Medicaid, right? And then they will, and it depends on, because I learned this recently, because I called a community for a client, because the client was, they said, I don't want to do that. I feel like I'm scamming the system. And I'm like, you're going to walk away with $175,000 out of this condo. What's the plan? That's going to be gone in a couple of years. Like, have a conversation, speak to the attorney to see, like, you are the perfect candidate for this. I could have just sold the house and been peace out, have a great life. But then, they basically, I called the community they were interested in. And she was gung-ho on sharing. She's like, oh, yeah, we take Medicaid. But you know what? Let me tell you, sweetheart, tell her that when she gets on it, she needs to check and go to this company or that company. Don't do this company because and these three, and this one pays the most. And this is, she was like an expert. And she was like, yeah, that would be great. And when I shared that with the client, they were like, oh my God, I could get up to, I think she said like 2,300 with one of them. And that goes towards, I don't know, honestly, I didn't take the notes, but so speak about that. So you get approved, Medicaid will pay for what? And therefore then Travis helps you put your other, the $175,000 into some sort of vehicle that can then, like you said, supplement your care. Because as we said, if you go in that community and you need an aid, that is extra. How are you paying for said aid? Well, or your dog.
If you've got spring fever, Lowe's has the cure. During SpringFest, make your landscape stand out with 3 free bags of Miracle-Gro 3/4 cubic foot garden soil when you buy 3. Plus, get up to 40% off select major appliances to keep clothes, food, and dishes fresh all season long. Our best lineup is here at Lowe's. Valid through 4/22 while supplies last. Selection varies by location. See Lowe's.com for details. Soil offer excludes Alaska and Hawaii.
Daughter might be caring for you and helping, and then you might have a personal services contract. And so kind of speak to like a couple of like the common vehicles and how it manifests. And then also like the amount that you are getting effectively, maybe the range that you're getting and where that goes towards when you are in that community.
Okay. All right. So I discussed this earlier. There's sort of 3 levels of Medicaid: home, independent living. That's sort of one. And then there's assisted living, and then skilled nursing, the highest. At the home or independent living level, you get about 15 to 20 hours of assistance a week. Normally, that's somebody a couple hours in the morning, couple hours in the evening, get you out of bed, get you back into bed, make sure everything's okay. I have heard of cases that get higher approval for hours. I've heard of 40 hours a week. But it's a case-by-case basis, and I normally tell people 15 to 20 hours. 15 to 20 hours at $25 to $30, it's about a $700 a week benefit. $3,200 a month roughly is what I tell people as far as the benefit at home. At an assisted living, it is normally a stipend towards your medical care, $1,500 to $1,800 normally. Okay, some facilities will blend the payment with your income. Others will not. So there's normally a situation where if the room and board's $3,500 and you got $2,200 in income, there's a $1,300 gap that has to be made up somehow. Skilled nursing, get a lot of bang for your buck at the skilled nursing level. Okay, so we're talking about your income goes to the facility, and that means all your income. So if you leave the house, and we leave the house behind, we have to make sure that the upkeep and all the costs of carrying the house are taken care of. Normally, that's family members, okay? So your income goes to the facility, and then Medicaid pays all other charges, okay? So a significant bang for your buck at the skilled nursing level. Now, when we are over assets or over income, there are ways that we can qualify. Income, I'll go over first. So if we have over $2,900 and I think it's $92 now. If we're over that limit in gross income, we have to set up what's called a qualified income trust, or, and this is apropos for our meeting, it's called a Miller trust. Okay. Pretty cool. So basically this is just like, you have to set up a bank account. I do a trust document, and then we have to transfer either all of our income or the amount that's over the Medicaid allowable limit into a bank account and then pay bills. If we have just assets, okay, cash, securities, things like that, life insurance policies that have cash value, normally, especially with life insurance and certain assets, we have to do a personal service contract. And that is where the applicant is hiring normally a family member, but it can be a friend, it can be, somebody they trust. And the way it works is we transfer the money that's over the Medicaid eligibility limit of $2,000. We transfer that from the applicant to the person that is giving, that is signed the personal caregiver agreement and essentially has agreed to become a caregiver. Now, it's important to understand that doesn't mean rolling up your sleeves in the skilled nursing facility. This is compensation for a lot of other things. Talking to the facility, making sure the care is coordinated properly, their diet, if they need clothes, talking to them. Just talking to the applicant is huge. A lot of people do not realize, for the most part, you may be the only person they're talking to outside of the facility. Everybody says they'll visit, and they do for the first couple of weeks, and then life takes its course and everybody's busy. And, so that's sort of what the personal service contract is. That's taxable income to the caregiver. Okay. That is something significant to consider as part of that.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And so I've set up an escrow company. We can escrow a personal service contract. So meaning the money, instead of it going directly to the caregiver, sits in an escrow account. As the caregiver needs money for the applicant, they pull it out, and they only get taxed on it as they pull it out. So if we only need $15,000 for mom in year one, we're only taxed on $15,000 instead of the whole $200,000 that we had to transfer because of the sale of the condo. Another option is called called pooled trust, and that's pool like POOL, like a swimming pool. And that is a charitable organization. There's a trustee that manages the charitable organization and all the underlying accounts. So if mom is applying and we choose to go the pooled trust route, mom will have an account with mom's name on it. It's basically like a special needs trust account. And then we would appoint somebody to direct the trustee to use money on mom, for mom's well-being, things that mom needs. Now, pooled trust is a little different than a personal service contract. The transfer into the pooled trust, there's no tax. Okay. However, when mom is gone or the applicant is gone, there's a charitable contribution first. So whatever balance is left in the account, okay, there's a charitable contribution that comes off the top. Then Medicaid presents a bill for all charges incurred by Medicaid while you're on Medicaid. Okay, so there's a payback.
They get paid back.
So there's a charitable contribution, payback feature, and then we can list beneficiaries. Okay. So there's sometimes some strategy involved here where we use both of them. Yeah. Okay. So one of the situations I run into a lot is like, we don't know how long mom or dad or they're going to be in an assisted living. We don't know. We have a gap maybe. So what I'll do is I'll transfer some into a pooled trust with the goal of like, we're going to spend this money. Because the key is if there's nothing left in that pooled trust account, there's no charitable contribution, there's no Medicaid payback. So I've had situations where we got $200,000. I'll say, let's stick 50 in the pooled trust, the other 150 in the personal service agreement. We'll use this 50 first.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's some ways to strategize and before I went to law school, I was a financial advisor. I was a stockbroker. I took my Series 7. Okay. So like I look at these statements, I look at people's money and I'm like, all right, okay, like we got to make this last as much as possible.
Yeah.
Okay. So like I've got that background as well a little bit. So I think that helps me sometimes, in the situations where we're looking at how long this money's going to last. Okay.
It's about increasing their quality of life for the longest amount of time and all the strategies
exactly.
you can use to
I've had a client in a nursing home 11 years.
Yeah.
11 years. It's, what's interesting, Nicole. Okay. This is an interesting thing. And I've just picked up on this, the stress level. People go to independent livings. Okay. My mom was stressing out about making lunch, dinner, all that stuff. Now she doesn't stress out about it. She's rebounding. Yeah. Okay. Like we all hear stress is a killer. We don't realize that some of these folks, like these small little things are like huge stresses to them. Yeah. My mom could worry herself into a heart attack about breakfast. I'm not kidding. And so like you'll see, and it's important to understand this, like as part of, like sometimes people are like, well, Mom, you don't want to go, but you need to go, things like that. That's an important thing to discuss. It's like, hey, this is going to be so much easier for you, Mom. Things are going to, the TV doesn't work. You call a number, somebody comes over, fixes the TV. Yeah. Instead of weeks and who's going to fix it and all this kind of stuff.
I like to tell people that it's like a cruise ship on land. And
it's like camp. I joke.
It's camp, yeah. Camp. I work with seniors and, you have to remember too, everyone, listeners out there, like these are not your grandmother's nursing homes. This is different, right? And so I think, mentioning about the stress and the stuff that they do, you've worked so hard. You've gotten to this point, you've retired, now you're older. And, if you have the ability to have others help and take care and do these things, that helps your quality of life. That extends, potential issues that would come about from from the stress. So I've always been, when I work with people, I get a lot of referrals from like senior placement people who are working and then they need to sell the house. And then I might loop you in because of Medicaid stuff and just kind of depends. But I usually will have these conversations with the seniors and it's all kind of tied back to planning. If you do these things in advance, you have the decision. You now are going to Shady Pines. All the girls. You're not going to Shady Pines. You're going somewhere else, right?
Self-determination. I talk about it all the time. You choose.
You choose. Like you're going to get old. You're going to need the help. Like that's really it's not changing anything, right? It's always going to be there. So like put yourself in a position, get ahead of it, speak with someone with, someone like Travis, and have that consultation, get all your ducks in a row, your full estate plan. And then also one thing too that I know, and I'm going to mention real quick. So when you're doing the right power of attorney, then you, like Travis will put a certain power of attorney in place with verbiage that will allow for certain things that other powers of attorney might be considered as self-serving. But there's things, and I'm not going to go into that, and we don't have much time to go into that, but like you need to get the right documents. My point is you need to get the right documents in place for your specific potential situation. So if you're doing this in advance, you're planning. Travis is helping you understand what it means to, when you're going to get older. If you do need care, then now we can bake in that you're going to have Medicaid planning and you're not going to be giving gifts away of X amount of money, because if you do that in a few years from now, there's going to be a look back period. We're going to have a problem. We're going to have to pay that back, right? So like you have to get ahead of it, and speaking with somebody like Travis to really look at that whole comprehensive picture is going to help you, is going to help your children, and really just make things so much easier. So I think that's like my biggest takeaway is that it may, Medicaid planning may not be in your deck of cards. You may not have that, but having all those ducks in a row.
The key is, and like just what I was talking about, the less stress, at least you've had the conversation. At least you sort of know what your options are instead of just hoping and praying and sort of possibly deluding yourself a little bit. And like that happens, but the reality is like, if you know what your options are, you're going to have a little bit of peace of mind to know like, okay, I'm okay. Or no, I've got to get some things done and this is how I do it.
And sometimes you might
And
be scared and you don't know what your options are. And now you're freaking out that you're not going to have enough money. And that was a situation I had with a few sellers, right? And they were, once they had that conversation, oh my God, they're literally like floating. They're like, okay, we're good. I'm good. Life's good. I'm so excited now. And I'm like, thank God. So, that's
one of the main concerns. We haven't talked about this, and maybe another session, but what happens when one spouse gets sick and the other one's completely healthy?
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize you can do spousal refusal in the state of Florida, and like that situation is simple for me to fix. People, I run into people all the time. We don't know what to do. This is awful. This is terrible. And I'm like, well, we can do this. And they're like, oh, really?
Yeah.
And there's some simple solutions. So, and I always, I'm not afraid to, I tell people all the time, call, just ask. Me or somebody else, and that's why, most of the time I'm not a stickler with my time as far as on the phone. I like to, and I like to make sure people understand it, because Medicaid planning is very complex.
Yep.
Deals with real estate law, estate planning law, all kinds of different assets we run into. It's important to have the conversation. I think mainly it's just the stress level. People have the conversation with me and they're like, okay, it's not hopeless.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, no, awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. I feel like we're going to have like multiple sessions on these topics.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we
I
got more to talk about.
appreciate it so much. And Travis is really great at educating and really digging into things. And he'll say something and then he'll come back and be like, oh, wait, no, we got to do this. I was thinking about it. And like, you really do add that value. And so please let us know, let the world out there know how one could reach you, maybe a website or a number. If you guys are looking to get yourself situated and, get your ducks in a row, super important. Please reach out to Travis. Where can they hit you up?
Okay. You can always call me directly at my office. My office number is 561-907-7848. We're here from 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. Also, you can check out my website. It's the name of my firm, FloridaElderLawOffices.com. We have information there, but we're more personal. I rather have people just call. You can always email me, but I think emails are impersonal. I like to have a conversation over the phone with people or meet them in person. They can always come by. I've got snacks and coffee, and I'm more than happy to chat about anything that people want to chat about.
Amazing.
So,
awesome.
I want people to know that I'm accessible, and most of the time they'll get me on the phone when they call. Okay.
Amazing. Thank you so much again. Everyone out there, thank you for joining us. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me or Travis. And if you have gained any golden nuggets from this show, please share, like. The purpose is to get the knowledge out there to help elevate everybody and get them the information they need to live the best life possible. So thank you guys again so much, and I'll see you on the next one.
Too many tools, too much stress, and way too many bills.
Odoo replaces it all. One connected platform for every part of your business, so you can work faster, smarter, and for less. Odoo, the only software you'll ever need. Try it free today at odoo.com. That's ODOO.com.